Okay, welcome everybody to another episode of the Anchor of the Week.
Yes.
We are buzzing for this one
We
today.
are so
Yes.
excited.
Yeah, this is our last episode of the series, and we have another guest on from overseas.
Exactly. Y'all thought that we were ending
Yeah.
the series on Control last week, but then surprise, surprise,
Surprise,
we are
surprise.
back.
Yes, and this is a good surprise. We
Yes.
have Officer Barbee with us. I
Yes.
just wanted to make sure I got that right. First of all, thank you so much for coming on.
Hey, really, thanks for having me. I really appreciate you guys giving me this opportunity.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So, we're kind of, obviously we interviewed last week the police from England, and now we have someone from the States.
Yes. Who's been in law enforcement for 15 years, I believe. Correct me if I am wrong.
Yes.
Which is amazing. A completely different perspective.
Honestly, yes. And
And we're so ready for this. We
are.
are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you just want to give your just a brief background of like what you do exactly, just so we have a bit of context?
So, according to Zach, really appreciate you guys having me on. I've been in law enforcement for over 15 years, and I'm also in the United States military. So what I'm able to do is while I am doing my law enforcement position, if the federal government feels they need to call me up for active duty, then my civilian job, which is law enforcement, they have to hold that position for me. And then I go serve and do my military duty. And then once I complete, I have the opportunity to go back to the position of being a law enforcement officer. So right now you're catching me with my military hat on here in Las Vegas, Nevada. But at the same time, because I'm serving the federal government here in the United States, the law enforcement side, they have to hold my position for me for up to 5 years, which is a fantastic plan for, especially being a reservist. So there's a reservist, then there's active duty, and then there's National Guard. So I'm actually a reservist in the United States military as well.
Awesome. Wow. Brilliant. And we just want to also quickly just clarify, just before we do dive into things, that this is just obviously your opinions and things, and also just like we're trying to attack the opinions of things rather than the specific people, and this is just our different perspectives that we're trying to share.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, if you've been listening to this podcast, you know that Zach and I are not American. But we also do know that there is a very specific culture right now around like the police and in law enforcement, and just kind of the idea of control that they have over the general public. And again, part of that could also be the narrative that we are seeing here overseas. And that is just something that we really kind of want to dig into today. Because as we say here in the Anchor of the Week, as Zach said, we attack topics, not people. But right now it feels like it's the opposite in society. Yeah. So that's kind of like your little brief overview. And we're just gonna, I think, jump straight in.
So, first just question, I guess, for yourself. Obviously, at the moment, again, this is just from what we can see and understand, it very much looks like it's the police and the law enforcement versus, like, the people. And it kind of looks like it's two different sides against each other almost. Obviously, I don't think that's what it was initially created for. Initially, it was most obviously to help and work together. Do you have initial thoughts on that, or can you see that as an issue at the moment, and can you see that that's like the current status almost? And just what are your general thoughts on that?
I think what we're seeing in that respect is just a very select audience. I think social media really drives that to really believe that it is a us against them type mentality.
Right.
But I think we talked about the majority of what law enforcement and our relationship with the public is actually pretty good. However, we do not want to negate the power of social media and how that affects the way people feel about certain things. We are very emotional people. I think we're emotional first. And so when we see something or hear something, we always have an emotional response to that from where our perspective is. So it does seem like it is the police officers against the public. However, from a law enforcement standpoint, we do not see us as being against the public.
Right.
Yeah.
We understand that our role is very important, and we understand that the role, like Zach said, we are put in a position of power. And it's sometimes people forget we volunteer for this. We volunteer to be police officers, to be able to serve the public. And I think sometimes people forget that.
Right.
Yeah.
So moving forward, we just kind of do our job on a daily basis. Some of the calls we get are very, I just say, you won't believe some of the calls we get that we have to go handle on a daily basis.
Yeah.
But we're always, our first mindset is to be a service to the public.
Yeah.
Right.
Regardless of what they think about us.
Sure.
Regardless. So.
And I think that kind of goes into my next question, actually, was how would you define like the police's role, like in the public or in society, right? Because some people do view it as, they're here to control, or they're here to, I don't know, fill in the blank. There's so many different things that people view the police as right now. But would that be your main way of describing it?
Probably a better way to describe it is watchdogs.
Oh,
nice.
If you think about it from a perspective of a dog has the ability to be very vicious, to be very dangerous, to be very unpredictable. However, as a watchdog, we are trained to protect those that cannot protect themselves. And so when you come from that perspective, because of our training, and one of the things that some people don't realize is that for me to get my credentials, it took over 7 months of training to do that, and over 1,000 hours of classroom, physical fitness, right, law. So we go through this very intensive training, but you can never cover everything. You can never cover everything that needs to be covered, what you do on a daily basis. So I would say probably more of a watchdog, where we are there to protect those that cannot protect themselves. We are, for example, we are controlled by the entity that has trained us, be it law enforcement, be it the federal government. We are controlled by that entity on how we are able to operate an area we're able to operate in, and we're not. So I have to admit also that there are some watchdogs that have taken advantage of our position and our power. I think the biggest advantage that I've seen at least over the past 20 years is the addition of videos of what we do.
Right.
I think that has exposed those police officers that have been doing the wrong thing. But then it also has, if I'm the bad officer doing all the wrong stuff, it also plays a role. If you guys are officers as well, then it kind of puts that bad reputation on you guys as well. But you guys are the good guys.
Right.
You guys are doing all the right things. But then again, we must understand the society that we're in. It is a information hungry, emotional, I want to be on this side versus that side, as opposed to sometimes getting the real answers of what really has occurred when it comes to the relationship between police officers and civilians. Yeah. Sometimes what we see on social media is a clip, right, of what sells, yeah, of what causes that emotional charge to sell our perspective of the story, or what we want the public to believe. There's a lot of stuff that police officers go through prior to having to engage with our public that a lot of civilians don't see.
Yeah. Do you think, just going even more into that then, do you think it's just the case of there being videos and us accessing that sort of thing? Because I really believe that we also play a big role in this relationship. I don't think it's just the police making wrong decisions and that's the only reason why there's a bad image out there. I think it's also that we play some sort of role. What do you do you think it's just access to video? Do you think there's more to it than that? Or do you think it's just this is where the world we live in today, it's we have access to these things now?
Wait, I'm sorry, ask your question again.
So what I'm asking is the fact that we have access to things now, do you think that's just why things are seen now rather than it not being seen? Or do you think it's a case of I don't know, something's changed over the past 20 years? Maybe that's a better way to format.
Oh yeah, definitely. The access of cameras and the technology, how it has advanced so quickly, then, being able to, take a picture of you guys right now and post it in real time on the internet, and it's just going to catch a snap, just a very specific moment in your life, which has no definition of really who you are.
Right.
If I would have caught a picture of you praying, Courtney, and that's all I caught, then some people may interpret that as, oh, now she's a holy roll, and now she's praying. But that's just one aspect of who you are.
Yes.
And I think what society has done, especially with videos, is that we catch people in moments, and then from our perspective, we define them in that moment.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we're catching with a lot of the videos, a lot of the, that we post on social media, is that we are catching a snapshot of, and sometimes it's instigated. Like, all right, we're going to, all right, let's see if we can get Officer Barbee to respond in a certain way so that we can catch him in a position so that we can portray him to the world as this person. Understand that we, as police officers, especially being on the street, which is what I was, a law enforcement officer in Kansas City, Missouri, we answer anywhere from I've answered in one day 40 different 911 emergency calls. Now, granted, all the phone calls aren't the level of what I need. They're not like life-threatening, but the time that it takes for me to answer a call and go to the next call, I understand that when I go to that call, I'm taking something from that call, be it Courtney's maybe emotional state of what she just been through. Zach has been going through something, and I'm trying to solve this problem. But we're problem solvers. So when we come in and I'm trying to solve your problem, once I take some of you with me wherever I go.
Right.
So as I'm going through the night, I'm taking a piece of every call through the night. So it's an emotional roller coaster that I'm going through that I have to, once I go to a different call, I have to reground myself, start from ground zero, and then handle your call the best way that I can. So I think social media does play a part of that, but it's only you only get a snapshot.
Yeah.
So just imagine I do 99 calls right. I get it right. The people are served. We handle the situation properly. And then that one call I get wrong. So now I'm defined by that one call.
Yeah.
And I think something that's very interesting too is that we forget a lot of times that, like, hey, like you're people, and like, this does not excuse. I am definitely not excusing any of the wrong decisions, or we've all seen horrible things, and that's just fact. But we can't forget that you guys are also people, and like, you can have a bad day, or maybe you just saw something that really deeply disturbed you, and I think a lot of times it's that empathy that we are lacking, Obviously as I said, there are some things though that, it's right or it's wrong, but that is, I think, a really key perspective shift that we need to have as well. Because I know if I was a police officer, I would not be making everything like super right and super just all the time, because I'm a human with emotions, which is really interesting. Something else that I think that kind of plays into this, which you also kind of mentioned, was that we all often see the law enforcement as our superior authority. Like, you are the ones that govern us in that sense. But you touched on the fact that no, you are just responding to the people even above you. And that, for me, is something actually very fascinating, right? Like, you can only do so much within the system that has been passed down to you, or that created for you by people even higher than you. Yeah. And do you have any kind of I don't know, just help us with that kind of perspective? Because I think a lot of the times what we do as civilians, if you will, is we look at you and say, okay, fix my problem. You know what I mean? Why can't you fix my personal problem? Never minding the fact that maybe you can't, or maybe you were told not to. I don't know. We've all seen crime shows, you know what I mean? We all understand that there's more behind the scenes. But do you have anything to kind of say along those lines, if you will, to kind of open up our perspective?
So we should be held to a higher power. I mean, we all should be held to a higher authority or a higher level of what's right and what's wrong, because that's what we're trained to do. But like you said, we are people as well. When we put the uniform, even if I don't say anything and I show up to the call, just the perception of my authority that society has given us, and that our job or our boss has given us is already when we already show up, even before we say anything. So the challenge is as I'm dealing with your issue in an authoritative way, I also have to show you that I'm human as well. Mm. And we are very visual people. Now, if I came in and say you were totally blind and you didn't know I was a police officer, and then you didn't know that I had on my uniform and I had all my gear on and says police and my weapon and all that, and I just came into your situation trying to help you out, then your perspective will be totally different. But we're still visual about what we see, and then we see the authority when we show up. Mm-hmm. So sometimes it makes it difficult to try to make us seem more human than the authority that we're given. Right. And that we're that we took the oath to carry, to do for our public. We volunteer to protect and serve because we know there's bad people out there. Yeah. We know that people have bad days. We have bad days. But sometimes what we have to do as police officer is take our emotional roller coaster, our personal life out of it. Mm. Because now I got to deal with Courtney. Courtney, what can I do for you to get you past the situation, to help you out? And we have a plethora usually of services that we can help you out with, but I can't do anything. I can only do what I can't make you go to the hospital. I mean, we have people that really needed to go to the hospital and they just don't want to go. Mm. So now I have to worry about, okay, so Courtney needs to go to the hospital. She doesn't want to go. Now I'm carrying that with me. So now what if something happens to Courtney when I leave? Right. So then that's where now it seems like we are being, as police officers and those first responders, it sounds now we're being pushy because now I'm going to make you go. Because I know it's best for you. But people see it as, oh, you're forcing me, you're taking away, my amendment. Yeah. It's not even about that. Yeah. I want to see you. I want to make sure that you're okay. And maybe where you're at right now emotionally is not, it's not in a place to where, with us being common, what we see in our experience of where you need to be. Mm. However, my goal on every call is to make sure that you, Zach, that you guys are okay. Mm. From every perspective, using every facility that we have to take care of you. Right. Well, it does become difficult for us to portray ourselves as humans. We are humans, but then at the same time, we have the authority to kind of do some of the things we do to make sure that the ones we are taking care of are okay as well. Yeah.
Would you so just to bounce off that slightly, what is the police's exact role then? Would you say, or at least over there, I don't know if it's really different each country, but is it to take care? Or is it to protect? Or is it to attend situations? Because you guys are called when something happens, right? So is that how you see it? That you go and deal with situations? Or do you see it as no, my role is to get this place safe. So that's that's not just attending things. That's also putting systems in place to keep things safe, rather, It
is. It is. That's a great point, because when we go to a call, the first thing is make sure that it's safe. It is a safe environment. And so sometimes we'll come in very aggressive and very authoritative and very in charge to make sure things are safe first before we can actually deal with the issue that's going on at hand. So one thing that I've learned and that they teach us at the academy is if you guys are a married couple and we are called to your house, once we step into your house is mine. Right. Because now what I'm doing is, even though you guys are going through some kind of situation, what has happened in the past is, say I'm dealing with you guys and you guys are dealing with the issue, but there's someone in the corner that wants to do harm to either you or I, and I miss that. Yeah. So whenever we go to a call, we always make sure everything is safe first. So you guys maybe have an argument. First thing I would do is come in and I would basically clear your house to make sure there are no more threats in the house that we have to deal with that's going to distract us from helping you.
Right.
Even before we can even address your issue, depending on the situation, we have to make sure the environment is safe.
Yeah.
Be it outside, inside. There are a lot of things that we have to, that we are taught in the academy that we have to be aware of on every single call. In America, sometimes the most dangerous calls that we go on, you would think would be some of the most, is a basic argument or a disturbance, a domestic event. Those are some of the most dangerous because the emotional state that the person is dealing with and the emotional state, how it can go from 0 to 100 real quick.
Yeah.
So when I come in, for an example, when we come into a call, say you guys are having an issue, the first thing that we're going to do is separate you guys because we know that being in you guys' presence, you guys are emotionally charged. So we'll come in and handle. So the first thing, the short answer is that we make sure everything is safe first.
Yeah.
Then after we make sure it's safe, then we go in and deal with your issue.
Yeah.
So the first thing is safety.
Safety is
Right.
first.
Yeah.
And I think you've seen that sometimes you see like on police shows where they'll go into a call and they're like, well, I'm here, I need you to help me. But he's still kind of walking around and surveying the room. That's real. We have to make sure the room is safe before we can actually deal with your issue. Because what we don't want is we come in and we miss something. And then all of a sudden now we're all in danger because we forgot to make sure that the environment was safe for both of us.
Yeah. Wow. And okay, so something that you have touched on a few times as well, that I would like to kind of just crack open a little bit more, is training. Because I know that this is one of a very controversial topic, at least from the narrative that we hear over here, is that like police officers, especially in the States, are not being trained properly to deal with situations, to deal with the public or where people are now. And we've seen lots of posts online, Reddit threads, all of this. And something you did say is that it's impossible to train for every possible situation, which is true. And I think anyone with, common sense can understand that. But I would love to know your perspective on that just very blanket statement argument of police are not trained properly, essentially. And I leave that ball in your court and answer it however you please.
It is difficult because training is important. And the amount of training that we get, it's never, sometimes we feel like it's never enough to deal with the situation that we have to deal with. It's never enough because it's always changing. It's always fluid. It's not the same situation every time. So it is, I can see that as in it, how people say, oh, we're not trained enough to do this. We're not trained enough because of the situation or how we handle situations. My answer to that would be, come to our training and see.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Come and see the amount of training that we have, these 1,000 hours that we go through. You can, like as an academy cadet that we go through our training, and then we do yearly. It's just so much. If we trained as much as people wanted us to train, we would not be out there protecting and serving like we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah,
because we could. I mean, it's almost like being if you guys do martial art, as you start, going through your martial art, you would think, repetition and then, but if you think about it, a person who is committed to that craft is training all the time. They're going through the steps, they're going through everything to try to address every situation.
Yeah.
We don't have that kind of time because bad people want to do bad things. And so we have to take what training we have. Hopefully it's enough to deal with the situation that we are called to do, to make sure that everyone comes out okay. And sometimes, if we're not, there's so many different things that we deal with on a daily basis, and trying to be trained on every single thing to the level of which society wants us to be is totally unrealistic. It's totally unrealistic. But we do our best. And as long as we go through the day and we do our best to try to serve those that we serve, then we can go home with a good conscience. I can tell you there have been numerous times that we go home and we know that we didn't handle that situation the best because we didn't feel that what we are called to do or what we volunteered to do, it just wasn't enough. And sometimes those are some of the hardest calls that we deal with, especially when it comes with children and women. If we cannot take that child or that woman out of that hostile situation, and we're only allowed to do certain things, then we carry that with us. And then we have to deal with, all right, she's in an abusive relationship, but she's so emotionally connected with this guy. We know the best thing for her is to get out of the house, but she don't want to leave because it's just so much that we have to deal with on a daily basis. So it is impossible to be trained on everything that we do, but I can tell you that every police officer that goes into a call does the very best he can with what he has to work with. So it is a very difficult job that we do on a daily basis.
Something that just another question for you. As a Christian, right? When I'm walking on the street and I see sometimes I'll see things happen on the street and they'll be like this guy just preaching away, and he'll just say some things and put on a very different impression to what I'm actually like as a Christian. And sometimes I feel like moments like that, now I'm not trying to put anyone down here or anything like that, but I'm also just aware they put on a different impression to what a Christian person is actually like. And so it then gets other people thinking, okay, all Christians are like this, and it puts us almost into this, I don't know if a box is a good way to put it almost, but it does almost. And that really frustrates me. Do you as an officer, do you see other incidences, there's obviously been loads of things on social medias and things like that, and you see something and you're like, that's really poor kind of representation of how we actually deal with things or what we actually do. I don't know. How does it feel when you see things happening? Obviously, we've seen a lot of things on social media. Do you see that, and what are your initial thoughts with that? Are you just this is poor and change needs to happen, or are you just, I don't know. Does that frustrate you as another officer, or is it just something you just have to put up with?
So it is very difficult for us when we see officers do bad things, because we know that is society is putting a bad light. Now they're saying all officers are that way.
Yeah. That must be frustrating.
When I see it, maybe I see it from a different perspective, because I know what a police officer goes through on a daily basis.
Right.
And we don't know what kind of call that he just handled. As we see in this, how this clip that we see, we don't know what he's been through his whole day. He may have been shot at, spit on, hit, cussed out. I guarantee he probably was cussed out at some point during the day.
Yeah.
And so now we have all this. Remember I said every call we carry something with us. Mm-hmm. So now what you're expecting us to do is to be superhuman. You expect us to carry all this as humans, to be superhuman, to be emotional. And then society expects us to handle this call perfect every single time. Nobody is perfect every single time. So there are times. So my perspective is I always wonder what that officer went through prior to him seeing us, we seeing him in this light.
Yeah.
There are times when he's dealing with, because we deal with stuff at home and then we deal with stuff at work, and then sometimes those two collide.
Yeah.
So what if I'm coming to a call and I have a situation to where my child is in the hospital for some reason. And then I come to this call where I see this child being abused and is in the hospital. And then what society wants to do is separate the two. Oh no, this is your personal life. This is your professional life. But that's impossible. to do because I'm a human as well.
Mm.
So usually sometimes we get frustrated sometimes because it's who that person is. At the same time, we're more concerned with how his actions, the second and third order effect. Because what we're worried about is not only are we worried about you guys as civilians and making sure you guys are taken care of, I also got to take care of my colleague. Because if he does something that is out of ordinary or something wrong, not only does that affect him, it affects his family, it affects his kids, it affects the way society sees him now off of one mistake. Now, I'm not excusing some of the mistakes that some of the officers make. But sometimes there's backstories. And have you ever seen where something comes out and then it's the loudest story. So that's the first thing we believe.
Right.
And as we start unpeeling that onion, like, oh, this guy was actually a bad guy. Oh, he actually hurt some people, or he actually done some things that are bad. And now the police officer is having to take all that. But we don't get that backstory until it's 2 or 3 weeks later. We have already convicted. We have already judged the police officer what he's done.
Yeah.
That happens a lot. But we have to, as police officers, we have to be in control at all times because every situation we go to is out of control. So we are put in a position to bring control into an uncontrollable situation every single time. And sometimes it's very difficult to do, depending on the situation. So it's not excusing what they do. But I think we also need to realize that they're people too, and they go through emotional roller coasters as well. I think just like, with my father, of course, Sadie probably told you, my father being a pastor for over 60 years and what we grew up with, you do not excuse the action, but you also don't judge the person off that one action. Yeah, you don't judge them off that one action. So
right.
All right. So now, we've taken this time and we've humanized, and I love that. Like, I think a lot of times we forget, again, that people are human, and we have, I think, a very unhealthy view of authority as well. So anyone that we kind of view in an authoritative position, we instantly feel like we don't relate to them or can't relate to them. So there's kind of a loss of that empathy and that, I guess, that humanity and understanding that the other person's a human as well. So I'm super happy and super excited and honestly really pumped up that we talked about that. And I feel like that is a really big underlying, I think, theme just for this talk. Now, but before we actually go and we kind of finish things up, there are some other controversial terms or buzzwords, if you will, that have been thrown around that are always trending on Twitter or whatever. And I would just love, again, as we said, attacking topics, not people, just the things that come to your mind or your perspective as someone that's living on the other side, of these issues that we see as social issues. But again, maybe I've never even experienced them yet, because of social media, I feel like I have a say in them, and I think that's a very interesting time that we're in. So we just have a couple for you. The first one is police brutality, right? That is a huge, huge thing, and it's always trending. Has there actually been a rise in police brutality that you've seen, over the past 15 years? Is that a misrepresentation maybe of what's actually happening? Or what are your thoughts when someone comes up to you and talks about police brutality?
how are you defining brutality?
Well, I think in the general scope of social media, it would be a police officer unnecessarily using his force, usually with physical force.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So are you asking me, is that how do I feel about when I hear that word?
Yeah, exactly. Or it's it's always trending on Twitter or something. And we talked about how, you could see one video and then go off, with that. and it kind of spirals out of control?
I think it does occur. I think because we are emotional animals, I think sometimes we do use our authority in the wrong way to get our desired result. Like I mentioned, our desired result of what we think is right. When I hear about police brutality, like I said, all right, well, let's unpeel how we got to this point. Because sometimes we want to take that point, that moment or that situation and define that person. Well, let's back up and let's see why he got to that position. Now, I'm not saying what he did was right.
Right.
But if we really want to start healing and trying to change that term of what that means, we have to find out what he's been through prior to that moment, or what he's going through right now or in his life. If I was one of the things that as police officers, like I said, we hate to see women and children abused. What we may not know is that police officer may have been an abused child. And you don't know that.
Right.
So now when I see someone when I see a child, if I was that police officer and I see that child being abused, I'm going to take it to the extreme because I don't want that child to go through what I've been through.
Right.
So sometimes they do take it to the extreme. I think it sometimes has to deal with what they've been through or what they've seen prior to that situation, which I guess doesn't give them the okay to do it, but there's a reason behind why he's doing that. So let's find out what that is. If you want to start healing our police officers, one of the things that we didn't do in the past is really think that police officers were going through mental stress or PTSD. And they think that we are superhuman and we don't have emotions and we don't go through that. We go through that on a daily basis.
Right.
Police officers come from abused homes. Police officers come from being sexually abused. Police officers come from being overly punished by our parents or whatever, or society. And we're just like you guys. Some of the issues, all police officers, I can guarantee that every police officer has been through every single thing that every person has been through as a whole. So I may have been abused. My other police officer may have been, sexually abused. I may have been physically abused. I may have been mentally abused. We've all been through that. Right. So when he goes to that level, no one, as a police officer, no, we're not taught to just snap like that.
Right.
As police officers. But as humans, yes, we do have the ability to kind of use our authority in a manner that's not right. And that's not right.
Yeah.
So when they talk about police brutality, let's peel that onion and find out what is he really going through. But for him to get to that point and have the authority to do that and abuse that authority, he's going through something.
Yeah.
He's going through something.
Right. And I think you mentioned something also very key, like you said, like to heal from this. And I think a lot of times we don't want to actually go through that or like understand that like that is something that needs to happen because it's a process and it like, yeah. So I think that was a really good and key word you said there. As well, another big thing, especially back in, I guess, 2020, was defund the police. Now that one, as a Canadian, did not fully, I guess, understand it because obviously that happened mostly in an American society. I think that is where it originated. And like the police structure there. Obviously it happened a bit in Canada as well. And I was trying to figure it out. But when someone talks to you about like, oh, we need to defund the police. Yeah, okay. That's what I was expecting.
I would know. I want to know what do they mean by what do they mean by that?
You know what? That is a great question.
Let me tell you this. If let's say use a scenario. Say we have 1,000 police officers on the street. That's our department has 1,000 police officers. If we cut police officers in half, can we guarantee that we can cut the criminals in half as well? Or people to do bad things, or can we cut that in half as well? Can we I guarantee if we cut the police force, the crime will increase. And then that goes back to our training. We don't have time to train because we're out there on the streets protecting you guys as best we can with what we have. So for them to, I would want to know, like, what do you mean by defund the police? Okay, well, how about should we defund teachers as well? What would that do? Should we defund surgeons? Because there's some bad surgeons out there. Let's defund them as well. Let's defund firefighters. How about we defund them, because some of them have done some bad things as well. So when you talk about defund the police, you have to really define, what do you mean by that? Are you talking about cut the staff? Or are you talking about, hey, let's get them more training so they're better at what their job is? Or let's get them the mental help they need to deal with, to make sure that they're serving us better. Let's try to fix this. There's a win-win situation in every scenario. We just have to take the time to find it.
Right.
So the defund, just like you said, that's that social media buzzword.
It's a buzzword. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, you know what? Honestly, well said. I've never asked an actual police officer that, so thank you for
Yeah, taking that on.
taking that on. Exactly, that perspective. But yeah,
Amazing.
this has been such an awesome episode. We're so excited. We're so thankful that you've been here. Do you have any kind of final things you want to say? Recap thoughts, or anything that you just want people to know about law enforcement, essentially, that we didn't get to talk about?
It's a thankless job. Everybody loves firefighters. Everybody loves paramedics, because they know that they're coming in to save. When we are called, it's usually because something is wrong or something needs to be fixed. And sometimes people don't like the way we fix things. So, and we're okay with that. We're okay carrying that title of coming in to fix things and maybe not handling the situation that you like, because at the end of the day, our concern is to make sure we protect and we serve. So it doesn't say we serve first and then we protect. Remember, we talked about when we come into a household, we got to make sure that we're protecting everything first. Once we get everything safe, now we're able to offer the service of what we can do to help you. And just realize that every police officer, what you're seeing, every police officer is not a bad police officer. There are a lot of great things that police officers are doing, just that it's not social media worthy.
Right.
It's not bringing the news. It's not getting the eyes. It's not getting the likes. But there's a lot of police officers that are doing the right thing and doing great things within the communities that we work in. Let's start highlighting some of those.
Right.
And see how that can change the perspective of the people. Granted, there's going to be someone that's going to see a situation and they're going to run with the bad. And that's in every situation. And let's have the fierce conversation. You know, if you really want to know what a police officer goes through on a daily basis, come ride with us and see what we deal with on a daily basis. Or because some people are able to do ride-alongs, right in the back seat.
Yeah.
You can go to every call that we go to. You can see how we handle every call that we go to.
Yeah.
And let's start doing some of that. If you really want to know what a person is going through, put yourself in their shoes. And a lot of people who are going with these buzzwords, defunding, police brutality, have no idea what we do, especially like in the military, what I deal with on a daily basis. People have no idea of what we go through on a daily basis just to make sure that we protect and serve those citizens that we're a part of.
Wow.
It's insane the amount of responsibility that we have to carry, and yet and still, it's a thankless job. But we volunteered to do this, and that's what we wanted. Someone has to do it, so we volunteered to do it.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Officer Barbee. Feels funny saying that, I don't know why. But yeah, thank you so much for your time, mate. Really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a wrap for the series.
It is a wrap for the series.
Yeah.
Thank you for being our grand finale.
Yes.
I think it was definitely well worth it.
And I know I feel very challenged. My perspective has definitely been challenged on quite a few things in this conversation. So we hope, for those that are listening, that you've at least had a challenge of perspective as well. And thank you for letting us ask you these questions that we've been wanting to ask and answering honestly. And it's been a great time. So thank you so much.
There's no problem. The fierce conversations need to be had if we're going to heal ourselves and our nation and who we are as people. You have to have the conversations, and I need to come from where I need to know where you're coming from to really understand how we can be better together.
Right.
And sometimes people don't want to do that. They don't want to have those hard conversations. You don't need to have them all the time, but have them to the point to where now I understand Courtney. Now I understand Zach. Now I understand Sadie. To know that if there's something that I can offer to make you guys better, or you have something to offer to make me better, then let's do that. Let's figure out what the win-win is moving forward, and become, heroes to those people that never had a hero or never had someone to come in and help them out, to be that example that God wants us to be as Christians. Be that person. I really can't get to know who you are unless I spend time with you. So come spend some time with me in my perspective. So let me hang out with Zach. I want to be there when Zach gets his tips frosted. I want to support that. I want to be there for that. So
I'll invite you over.
It'll be a whole thing. We'll trade a ride along for frosted tips.
Hey, and then just realize, we're not perfect.
Yeah.
We try to be. We're given authority. Sometimes we do abuse it because of what we've been through, because we've been abused. And sometimes when we just, it gets so frustrating. But we try to be the best that we can be on a daily basis, and sometimes we hope that's enough.
Well, there you are. Well said.
Yes.
Well said.
Yeah.
That's a perfect way. And I guess, as you said, even just to me and Zach, that being the best you can be and doing your best is sometimes all you can do. But hey, thanks for showing up. Thanks for showing up here today on this episode.
Hey.
Thank you so much. Now, before we leave, Zach, where can we?
That's the question.
Where can they find us?
We're all over YouTube, the Anchor of the Week, and Instagram, and also TikTok.
Yes.
We finally posted recently, didn't we?
Yeah, our TikTok is
TikTok. It's pending. Yeah. So.
And of course, all podcast platforms.
There's always one.
There's always one he forgets.
Always one.
But that's why I'm here. It's fine.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Officer John Barbee. Thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of the Anchor of the Week. Yeah. And we will see you real soon.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.